Herzlich willkommen im Arbor Online Center. Mein Name ist Lienhard Valentin und ich freue mich heute über zwei Gäste zu einem Thema, was immer mehr Menschen im deutschsprachigen Bereich auch und weltweit interessiert, nämlich zum Thema Selbstmitgefühl. Zunächst einmal herzlich willkommen, Tim. Tim Desmond ist ein renommierter Dozent an der gemeinnützigen privaten Antioch University, wo er auf Selbstmitgefühl basierte Psychologie unterrichtet. Und derzeit arbeitet er mit Google an einem Projekt, um leicht zugängliche und bezahlbare emotionale Unterstützung für Menschen auf der ganzen Welt verfügbar zu machen. Klingt spannend, da werden wir dich später noch dazu fragen. Nach einer schwierigen Jugend kam Tim in Kontakt mit den Lehren des vietnamesischen Zen-Meisters Thich Nhat Hanh und widmete sich schließlich längere Zeit in Plum Village der buddhistischen Praxis. Darüber hinaus war er Co-Organisator von Occupy Wall Street und Autor von 3 Büchern, Compassion in Psychotherapy, nicht ins Deutsche übersetzt, dann Die Kunst des Selbstmitgefühls, kürzlich bei Arbor erschienen, und sein nächstes Buch wird dieses Jahr erscheinen und heißt How to Stay Human in a Fucked Up World. Spannender Titel. Chris ist schon wohl bekannt. Ich habe vorhin überlegt, ich glaube vor 9 oder 10 Jahren haben wir uns kennengelernt und vor 8 oder 9 Jahren ist er auch das erste Mal in Deutschland gewesen. Chris Germer ist Doktor der Psychologie und klinischer Psychotherapeut sowie Teilzeitdozent an der Harvard Medical School und, wie die meisten vermutlich wissen, ist der Co-Begründer, einer der beiden Begründer des MSc-Programms, zu Deutsch Achtsames Selbstmitgefühl, Mindful Self-Compassion, das mittlerweile mehr als 50.000 Menschen rund um den Globus vermittelt wurde. Darüber hinaus ist er Autor des Buches Der achtsame Weg zum Selbstmitgefühl sowie Co-Autor des Mindful Self-Compassion Workbooks, was jetzt dieses Jahr auf Deutsch erscheinen wird. Und darüber hinaus ist er Gründungsmitglied des Instituts für Meditation und Psychotherapie, leitet international Workshops und Trainings in Achtsamkeit und Mitgefühl und hat eine private Praxis in Arlington, Massachusetts, in der er sich auf achtsamkeits- und mitgefühlsbasierte Psychotherapie spezialisiert hat. Nicht zu vergessen, auch wenn nicht sichtbar, Hilde Steinhauser, die übersetzen wird, sowohl für uns ins Deutsche als auch für Tim vor allen Dingen, weil Chris versteht recht gut Deutsch, vom Deutschen ins Englische. Und Hilde ist selbst MBSR und MSc-Lehrerin und im MSc auch Trainerin, also von daher ganz in der Materie, und allen, die sie kennen, wissen, dass sie mit ihrer Warmherzigkeit alle Menschen nochmal berührt. Und Chris sagt immer, dass ihre Übersetzung eigentlich besser ist als ein Original. Ich glaube, das darf ich sagen, Chris.
Ja. Du darfst es sagen, weil es wahr ist.
Gut, vielleicht beginnen wir damit, weil vielleicht nicht alle schon wissen, was eigentlich MSc oder Self-Compassion überhaupt ist, was ihr jeweils unter Selbstmitgefühl versteht.
Yeah, I'd be happy to start. For me, there's a way of being present with any human being that relieves and transforms suffering. And the word that I'd use to describe that way of being is compassion. And so developing the ability to provide that kind of healing and transformative presence for any suffering that's inside myself, I would call self-compassion. I'd call the practice of self-compassion. And yeah, I think that would be my the way that I describe it.
Yeah, so I'm appreciating that beautiful and soulful description, Tim. And when people ask themselves, okay, so how do we do that for ourselves? What are, can you give me some signposts or tools how to actually do that? One can define self-compassion a slightly different way, similar but different. And so self-compassion can be understood as treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding as we would treat someone whom we genuinely love. And then the question is, what might be some additional characteristics of that relationship, that healing relationship? And that is the foundation of Kristin Neff's research. And that is when you're self-compassionate, according to Kristin, you are mindful, which means you know what you're experiencing while you're experiencing it. And secondarily, there's a sense of common humanity, or I'm not alone. And then the third is self-kindness or care, a sense of warmth, support, like that.
It's interesting. When answering the same question, I think that I would focus on seeing the beauty in someone. I think for me that describes another way to describe this. Yeah, so for me, recognizing any part of myself and seeing that there is the desire to be happy or to be well, but like all human beings, we don't know how to do that. And that for me, ultimately, that's a situation that we're all in. In Buddhist psychology, there's a term, bodhicitta. And one way that that's spoken about is it's this desire for wellness. It's this, or a wish for wellness. And yet, in Buddhist psychology, we also talk about primary ignorance, which is basically, as much as I wish that I knew how to be well, how to be happy, in many situations I don't. And that is something that is just an inherent part of being human. And so, if we can find the beauty in that situation, if I can see that this wish to be happy and this inability to know how to do that, if that makes me see myself or another person as if I see the beauty in them, then the natural result is compassion. So sometimes this is easy and sometimes it's not. If I am anxious or sad in a kind of a simple way, then just remembering to be kind and to see the beauty in myself it can be not too difficult. But it gets more complicated with things like shame or ways that or self-criticism. And I know Chris has been thinking a lot about these situations lately. I'd love to hear if anything that I was saying brought up some thoughts for you.
Yeah, thank you. Again, I just really appreciated uh, as you spoke to invite us into the problem, Tim, which is that we need to find something good or love, part of ourselves or another, for compassion. Yeah, so in my view, the one aspect of human experience that makes that so difficult, as you said, Tim, is shame. And shame is a interesting emotion which doesn't get enough attention, I think. And the main reason is that shame removes us from the picture. We don't talk about shame very easily because when we feel ashamed, we're not even there. So just having the ability to say, "Oh, I'm feeling shame," is a huge step forward. But shame has many faces. One of them Tim mentioned was self-criticism. So, for example, when we feel foolish or silly or stupid or disrespected, that's probably shame in there, or weak or inferior or embarrassed. Anyhow, so shame is associated with many emotions, and in fact, most sticky, long-term, difficult emotions like anger or fear have shame in them. But I think the cool thing, Tim, about self-compassion is that it makes shame workable. So we don't even have to say, "Oh, this is shame," in order to begin to be kind to ourselves because we're suffering. We just need to know that we're uncomfortable, and we can then learn to be kind to ourselves. So often we can address our shame without even calling it shame by cultivating the skill or the resource of self-compassion, of kindness toward ourselves when we struggle, even if we don't know what we're struggling about.
Ich möchte vielleicht kurz noch etwas euch fragen oder ergänzen. Wie zumindest du, Chris, weißt, arbeite ich vor allen Dingen mit Eltern, und das heißt 90% Müttern. Und diesen Müttern fällt es nicht schwer, Mitgefühl für ihre Kinder zu empfinden, aber es scheint fast unmöglich zu sein, mit sich selbst einverstanden zu sein und dieses Gefühl, nicht gut genug zu sein oder nicht perfekt genug zu sein, ist extrem stark. Und für manche, wenn ich eine Mitgefühlsmeditation mache, dann fange ich mit ihrem Kind an. Und wenn sie sich dann sich selbst zuwenden, ist es für manche wie ein Schock. Was? Ich selbst soll auch mich mir selbst so zuwenden wie meinem Kind? Und das scheint ein Ding der Unmöglichkeit. Und von daher glaube ich, dass Selbstmitgefühl also in der Arbeit mit Eltern, scheint mir die wichtigste Qualität von allen zu sein. Und vielleicht als Frage, könnt ihr etwas dazu sagen, warum es so ist, dass wenn wir anfangen, freundlicher mit uns zu sein, warum wir dann nicht uns gleich besser fühlen, sondern vielleicht sogar erstmal traurig, Schmerzen fühlen, also dass es anscheinend erstmal schlimmer wird.
Yeah, I'd be happy to respond a little. My meditation teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, tells a story. One day, it was a beautiful summer day, and he was in his hermitage in France. He opened all the windows and went out for a walk in the forest. And while he was out, a thunderstorm came through. By the time he returned to his hermitage, all of his paper and ink and everything had been blown all over the floor. His room was a mess. He says the first thing that he did was to close the windows and the doors. And then he could sit down and begin to clean up his room. If we have been away from ourselves for a long time, when we return home, we might find that there's some cleaning that needs to happen. There is suffering that has never been cared for. And as we begin to pay attention in an open way, we notice what's been there all the time. And if we recognize that all suffering is asking for compassion and love, then it becomes very simple what we should do. We offer love and compassion to whatever suffering there is. But there is another part of your question, which is sometimes it's really difficult to find any love or compassion for myself, even if it's easy for others. That can be because we haven't developed the skill of self-compassion, so it's new. But in my experience, it is much more often that there is some part of you that does not want to offer love and compassion to yourself. That part of you is not evil. It is suffering. It is afraid for some reason that self-compassion will not be a good thing. So we learn how to listen and direct our compassion to that part that's afraid.
Yeah, if I could add regarding Lienhard's mention of parents. So the question would be, what is the part of the mother or the father that is not permitting themselves to be as kind to themselves as to their child? So some of the concerns that part has are, if I give myself the same love as I give my child, then I will be selfish, or my child will suffer, or I will become weak and not be able to do all the difficult things that a parent has to do. Or if I pay attention to my own suffering, I'm just going to become one little me, and I won't be able to care for my family. So as Tim was saying, it doesn't feel safe it feels safer to ignore myself rather than to care for myself as a parent. So to give a metaphor, when a baby is born, the first breath the child takes is in, before the child breathes out. And the interesting thing is that all the other adults, when the child is being born, are waiting for the child to first breathe in for themselves before they breathe out. And then everyone in the room is happy. But the funny thing is, the people we care for, like children or our patients or our students, they also want us to breathe in for ourselves. They also want us to care for ourselves so that we can care for them. So there's a part of us that thinks if I care for myself, then I will ignore others. But actually, when we care for ourselves, I think you would agree, Tim, we are more present, more available, and can be more helpful to
Yeah, I'd like to add one more factor that can make self-compassion difficult. And that's when we find a part of ourself that believes we don't deserve compassion. And in my experience, it's often a part that was formed in a moment that we were not loved. Cognitive scientists have confirmed that people always create stories about their experience. It's impossible not to make up a story about why something emotionally relevant happened. And often painful experiences lead to stories about ourselves not deserving love. There are practices that Thich Nhat Hanh teaches where we go back to painful experiences and send ourselves compassion in a moment that we needed it. This can change the story that we have about ourselves. Sometimes I'll ask my clients, if you've always deserved love, let me say that a little different. If we knew that you've always deserved love, then how would we have to make sense out of what you've experienced? And this allows us to create a different story about our lives that can make room for self-compassion.
I'm appreciating the power of looking at our personality in terms of parts and thinking about self-compassion as the capacity to hold all the parts of us, the frightened parts, the wounded parts, but in particular to be able to touch the pain of a part and to provide a different response, I think is very powerful. One simple practice that one participant in an MSc program suggested was, if you have pictures of yourself as a child when you were struggling, to put that in a place like on your desk or in the kitchen. And then whenever you go by and you see that child, to put a hand over your heart and to wish the child well, like, I love you, or welcome, or thank you for being in my life. Some corrective narrative, as you're saying, Tim.
It makes me think of a practice I've used, especially with parents. If you, my son is 5 years old, and if it's easy for you to feel love for your 5-year-old child, but difficult toward yourself, then send love to yourself as a 5-year-old child. And then you find that you can move through your life and see that in each moment you were perfectly lovable. For me, the core practice is noticing discomfort, as Chris said, that there's some difficult thought or a difficult feeling in the body that's there. And the next part can be very difficult, which is stop everything else and recognize that it is worth your time to take care of this distress in you. And then the first step of compassion is just acceptance. So just feel what you're feeling, even if it feels uncomfortable. This is the compassion of, I'm allowed to feel however I feel. that it's a permission to be how you are. And then to recognize that there is some pain in you that needs love. And then, if it's possible, just to give that pain the love that it needs. And if there is some obstacle that makes this difficult, then I want to listen to that part in a compassionate way. What are you afraid of? How can I help you? There are a lot of practices that can be helpful in this journey, but the most important aspect is to let yourself experiment and be creative, to find something that feels helpful to you. Are there any other questions or thoughts?
Chris, möchtest du noch was ergänzen? Oder?
I was just thinking as Tim was speaking that how lovely it would be for people who've taken the MSc course to be able to spend a weekend with Tim and experience self-compassion, you know, from another angle and another voice, you know, slightly different sensibility than they may have picked up with MSc, but utterly complementary, you know. Yeah, and then the second part was I loved that exercise of seeing if you're having difficulty with your child at a particular age, to bring compassion to yourself at that age. Mm-hmm. I can just imagine that parenting then becomes a consciously transformative experience through the lifetime of the child. As long as one's child is alive, you can heal yourself, you know, on purpose. Thank you.
Just want to respond to what Chris said there. My wife passed away recently after a long struggle with cancer. And as I was, have been going through this time with my son, connecting with the 5-year-old in me has been very helpful. There are times as a parent that you're not going to meet everyone's needs. So I would connect to that 5-year-old part of me to feel more connected to my son's experience and recognize in myself that just knowing that I'm loved always felt like the most important thing. So I think it can be a way of healing the pain in me and also feeling more connected with my child.
Thank you, Tim.
Ja, vielen Dank. Ich denke, unsere Zeit ist soweit auch um. Gibt es noch etwas, was du, Tim, oder du, Chris, noch gerne sagen würden zum Abschluss für unsere Zuhörerinnen?
Well, I would like to say thank you, Hilda. And also thank you, Lienhard, and for putting this together, and Katya at Arbor. And I just really appreciated sharing a felt sense of self-compassion in this conversation. And the beautiful thing is that a lot of this felt sense that Tim is talking about is now becoming scientifically supported. But I think that probably one of the most important things to keep in mind after this interesting conversation is that self-compassion really is, even though it's called self-compassion, is best learned in community. And so I hope that listeners to this podcast will have that opportunity to attend a program and learn it with others and have that sense of common humanity. So I'm grateful to Arbor Seminar for making this opportunity available to so many people in Germany.
I want to echo everything Chris said and thank you to everyone who put this on. In Buddhist psychology, every practice starts with two things: motivation and confidence, which means motivation means I recognize that this is important. Confidence means that I believe it's something that I can do. As Chris mentioned, all of the research on self-compassion shows that it is important and available to everyone. And I hope that you find ways to practice that benefit you deeply. Thank you.
Danke. Vielen Dank euch dreien, auch dir, Hilde, für diesen wirklich sehr inspirierenden Dialog, wie ich finde. Es gibt einige Fragen, die ich sowohl dir, Tim, als auch dir, Chris, noch gerne gestellt hätte, aber es wird ja vielleicht auch weitere Möglichkeiten geben, manche Dinge anzusprechen und zu vertiefen, und darauf freue ich mich dann schon. Vielen Dank auch fürs Zuschauen und auf Wiedersehen.